Hello and welcome to PC and Gaming Tech. I'm TheGrayingTech, and today we're going to take a look at the most popular Lian Li accessories of 2020.
This video is sponsored by me. If you're into PC gaming, PC technology, and want to stay informed on the latest hardware, software, news, and reviews, go ahead and click that subscribe button.
This is also the start of my official 2020 build. I'm calling it Red Star, not because of the direction the country may be going, but because of this right here. This was my most recent motorcycle helmet, and I took a lot of inspirational cues from this particular helmet and this particular design. I'm going for very hard edges, I'm going for very straight lines with a red, white, a little silver, a little black background and accent pieces. Additionally, I am going to be water cooling this because, quite honestly, with this Lian Li O11 XL Dynamic, you really do need to water cool these cases in order to get the best performance. There is an air version that you can also get if you are interested in the air cooling that Lian Li is going to be able to provide. So today we're going to take a look and a deeper dive at this particular case. We're going to take a look at the SL120 fans and the Streamer Plus kit from Lian Li. This is an entire Lian Li special and the first of many of my builds to come. Now, the first thing you will notice with the Lian Li Dynamic is just how modular the design itself is. Every single panel that you see on here is removable, and that is an amazing feat that really comes in handy when it comes time to paint. Now, one of the things I really wish that I knew when I was disassembling this here case was the feet themselves come apart, the top comes apart, the side pieces come apart, and pretty much every piece of the internals also comes apart. You're left with a shell, and I also believe that this front panel right here is capable of coming off as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. If you are aware of how to do it, please leave some comments below. I did manage to take all of the screws out, find all of them, but there were still a few mystery nuts or bolts that seemed to be holding things in place, and I didn't want to drill out rivets. So this case starts off silver right here. I painted this. I will go through the painting process that I used in a later video, but essentially I wanted this to be a red on white theme with as minimal amount of black as I possibly could. The default case will even come with a black strip here, which you can see that I painted white. On the front panel, you have your standard HD audio inputs, you have USB 3.1, you have USB-C inputs, you have power, reset, and you can also control the case lighting with the buttons on the bottom. Pretty good front panel and I/O input from Lian Li. On the bottom near the feet, you also have two additional USB 3.1 inputs. So very good, useful front design for the case. On the back, you can see multiple ways to configure the power supply, the hard drive cages, where you actually line up things. My power supply in this instance is in the bottom slot. There's a bracket there, and there's also a pad that helps absorb vibration. The top slots would be used with hard drives, except I'm really not a fan of hard drives. Plenty of PCIe spacers. It does go all the way to the top. I don't have two of them in, simply getting ready to install the motherboard and a graphics card. Fan output here. You have fan outputs on top, on the bottom, and on the side. We'll dive into those a little bit more when we actually pop the covers off. Lastly, you do have a see-through panel, front and back. This does have a gray to black tint to this particular version. This is the ROG certified edition. The only thing that I can see that makes this ROG certified is it is designed to work with ASUS's Sync. Otherwise, I don't know if they had anything to do with the actual case design. However, DeBauer did, and those who don't know DeBauer, he is a member of the extreme overclocking community out of Germany, has designed some pretty cool things, and has partnered with Lian Li on this particular case. Why I think this case is so popular is right here. This image right here. You can see RGB, you can see your CPU, you can see your GPU, you can see casework that you have done inside of the case. And quite honestly, For people that are putting in the effort and building your own system, that's exactly the kind of thing you want. Gone are the days where you simply painted the outside and called it a day. Now there's a heavier focus on making sure that the inside looks just as good, and this case allows you to do that, obviously, in spades. Another reason, the price. I picked this guy up off of Newegg, not a sponsor, for less than $200. It is on back order. You will have to be a little bit patient in order to get the case itself, but it is absolutely worth it. Finally, this comes in white with that silver trim in the front, all black, or silver basically all over. All right, let's dive into the inside so I can show you some of the unique aspects that makes this case something that really modders are going to be attracted to and explains its popularity. I'm gonna disassemble the case itself and show you how easy it is to take apart. The first thing that you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna unscrew the screws right here and this little latch mechanism. You can see, as I've already mentioned, I've painted this particular case, so I've even took apart some of the plastic internals and was able to paint those as well. That's the level of detail that Lian Li has gone through to ensure that you are getting a modder's dream in terms of a case. So, sliding the top back, you can pop it off, and you can see a good amount of airflow is coming through the top. Now this should be your exhaust area, which is why that you're gonna want that. It also has this unique pin kind of holding layout there that actually grips onto the inside of the case. And again, the last little bit here is a internally locking mechanism right there. On the top, you do have a case filter. This is a fine mesh style filter. It is magnetic on all four sides, and if you are using any of these areas for intake, I would highly recommend this. I am going to test the actual airflow for these with and without, see what happens when you put a radiator in front of this and test it that way as well. But for the most part, I have heard decent things about these particular filters. Coming around to the front side panel, it's just a simple matter of pushing your fingers there and lifting straight up. Now, this case does have a acoustic felt around the sides and the bottom there, and a very sturdy frame. This is very well tempered glass. You can definitely hear some decent quality there. And the side felt here is going to help make sure that you get sealed airflow, as well as help reduce on the noise front. You can see we have grommets. Now I just plastic dipped these. It didn't come out perfect, but you know, I'm more or less happy with how it did turn out. You have a bottom tray, which is awesome for mounting fans or mounting a rad. Again, taking the plastic pieces apart, you can paint all of this. If you are interested in painting, if you are looking to modify your case in any way, this is an amazing opportunity and an amazing case to do so. One thing I will go ahead and call out now, because I'm sure if I hold this like this, you can see my mistake on camera. This is more of a creamy white. This is more of a bright, maybe ice white. For those who aren't aware, there's apparently different shades of white. Unfortunately, during the painting process, some of the paint oversprayed, despite the fact that I taped it down and really tried to ensure that the places I didn't want paint didn't end up getting painted. So in my hubris, I did not look up the code that Lian Li used to paint their case, and instead just used the white that I was going to use for some of these black pieces all over the case. And it didn't come out exactly the way it should. It didn't perfectly match. Now I am going to water cool this. The water cooling that I am going to use actually matches this tone of white a little bit better than this tone. So for the most part, I think it'll be okay. But this is just some of the things that you need to keep in mind and consider when you are looking to do painting and these kinds of mods. Don't be impatient like TheGrayingTech was. Another little cool feature while we are looking at the front, additional air filter down here at the bottom. You can see similar pattern as has been used throughout the case with just much bigger holes. Now this is supposed to be air intake. It is not a removable filter in this instance, so if you lose this, chances are you are not going to have your filter. The fact that it is spaced probably about 3, maybe 4 millimeters away from the bottom of the case means a great deal of air is actually going to be able to be pulled in through the bottom of the case and into the rad. So if they have designed this properly, we should not see a lot of obstruction for the airflow intake on the bottom. The other thing here that I want to note, the way that the feet are designed, it actually stands off quite a bit between the bottom of the case and the surface that it lands on. This gives you a good amount of clearance, again, to suck that air up and into the case, exactly the way that you want a case to be set up. Swinging to the front now, you can see again the front I/O, the nice separation between the panel here, the glass panel, and then an additional column. Lots of things that you could potentially do if you don't like my setup or don't like Lian Li's setup. Additionally, there's an LED strip right here that does a pretty good job of lighting up the panel too. So lots of accessibility, lots of ability to reach in and to move around and to do things that you might need to do from the front or the side of this case. Swinging around to the side, you can further see my mistake here. I decided I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna leave that as an accent and a reminder to myself that I just need to slow down sometimes when I'm doing something like this. Popping this panel off is just as simple. You push up, and I will show, there's 2 additional magnetic mounted filters. Now these are not full coverage. You can see the top and the bottom do not have the magnets that you would on the top, but it does kind of sit in its own little tray, which I think is another nice, unique touch, because essentially that gives just a little bit of extra clearance between the outside grill and the inside area of the mesh, so as it's trying to suck in airflow, it can hopefully pull in just a bit more, which is exactly what you need for a high performance case like Lian Li has here. Now I will note that I have disassembled a lot of this particular case. One of the unique elements here is the SSD trays can be mounted here, or fans can, or a distribution block, or a traditional reservoir. You have a lot of space in this area to do pretty much anything that you possibly could want. In fact, let's take a measurement. So from the top to the bottom is roughly, let's call that 435 millimeters from the top edge here to the bottom edge right here. So that's the distance that you have basically for anything that needs to pass through, like a fan. Now top to bottom, you're looking at about 480 millimeters from the very top of the case up here to the very bottom of the case down there. That gives you a lot of flexibility to basically do some really cool designs and mods. This is another area that you can mount SSDs, you could mount controllers, you could mount power switches, all kinds of things could be mounted inside of here and you would never know it. One of the elements that I think is really cool about this back is the way they have designed this mounting plate. It simply pops right out, pull up, and it has teeth that you can see right here. Those teeth basically sit on the bottom of the case, and these 2 holders grab upon these pins. So what you're essentially doing is you're just sliding it in, pushing it flat, and now you have a shield that can block a bunch of cables, some things that necessarily you don't want to look at all the time. This is a Corsair H11 1000. I have decided to paint that as well, as you can see, in order to continue the red theme. We have the white theme going on there with the red outside. This mounts extremely well. It is very snug in there, and it is resting on a pad down here below. That prevents vibration. That's allowing the case, any of the moving components of the case, to basically be dampened, and that helps cut down on noise. Again, you can see the pass-throughs for the grommets. You also have pass-throughs that you might not be able to see top, bottom as well. And then this is where the internals of your motherboard would sit. So if you have a back plate or you're changing something out, you can get access to it without taking the motherboard out. One thing to note right here is in the traditional setup where the hard drive cages themselves sit. I am completely avoiding basically using hard drives anymore, and so I just took them out, but the cages would essentially sit here. You can access it here in the back, and that gives you the opportunity to pull them in and pull them out. A lot of this case is designed for easy access. You can see a simple thumb screw right there gave me access to that panel. Certain things like the power supply though are definitely screwed in with good solid mounting screws. You can see that you have plenty of room for your PCIEs. Your IO shield is going to go here. And then for water coolers, you have lots of room up top here for the radiator, for tubing, for anything that you got necessarily going on there, and down here below. Now this case is designed to support a vertical riser for your PCIe if you choose to actually go that route from an aesthetic reason. If you're water cooling, chances are you're not going to notice a performance difference. If you're air cooling though, there has been some speculation that that does give you slightly better performance. So that is the physical case itself. Let's talk a little bit about the cabling over here in the front panel. Now, as I mentioned, it does have the HD audio. I don't use that. You shouldn't use it either. It is often unshielded. It is difficult to get a clean audio source, and if you run it anywhere near a power cable, chances are you're going to get the hum that is associated with that. So in order to pop that out, there is a glued connector right here. You basically need to cut the glue around it, and then the cable will actually pop out. So the other cables that we have here, we have the USB-C connector here. We have the top USB 3.1s. We have the bottom USB 3.1s. Those are the ones down here. We have several cables that go down to this little box here, which helps control the lighting for the front of the case itself. That does have its own SATA connector and 5-volt ARGB connector. Do not plug this into a 12-volt header. It will fry the LEDs. So cable management is pretty much what you would expect. You have also the standard connectors that you would use for the motherboard. So the last thing that I want to do is show you some of the more complicated measurements or the items that just don't seem to be out in the general public in order to make sure that you understand kind of the measurements that you might have for water cooling and for other purposes. Starting off the internal, from the back of the PCI bracket to the very front panel is 450 millimeters. From the back plate of the motherboard tray to the front edge of the case, 178 millimeters. Now you do have to account for the offset of the mounting pins of the motherboard itself, of course the thickness of the motherboard and the PCIe. That can cost you upwards of 15 to 20 millimeters as well. Taking another measurement from the back where the distribution plate or the SSDs would go to the front of the case is 217 millimeters. So if you do the quick math there, you can basically figure out the distance between the back plate and where the motherboard would sit, roughly 40 millimeters. Measuring from the back of the SSD mount to the edge of the case, 51 millimeters. And measuring from the back plate to the back of the case, 92 millimeters. So I know a lot of people have asked for those kind of measurements, so I hope that is helpful, and I certainly am willing to measure any other portions of the case that people have questions about. So that is the Lian Li O11 Dynamic XL ROG certified version. I hope that was a helpful look at the Lian Li O11 Dynamic XL. Next up, in the next video, we will cover the SL120 fans, and then in a third video, we will cover the Lian Li Streamer Plus kit. Thank you very much. I'm TheGrayingTech. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.